So you got actually, I guess the first question is for both of us.
Yeah, there's a few that are relevant.
Okay.
Well, we can just go back and forth. We'll make it sort of
conversational.
Yeah.
Did that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to formally ask the question and then, for
Really?
purposes of your documenting?
I mean, I could, but I had this interview the other day, and I was asking, I would ask a question, and he would talk for like 10 minutes and then say, "What's your next question?"
Yeah, no, you won't have that problem here. And what's this for?
This is for a research project that I'm doing is just this really big.
So you're doing a research project?
Yeah.
So you have to pick a topic for a senior project,
Mm-hmm.
and you picked this one because?
Well, because my mom worked for Social Serve, and I thought that it would be really cool to learn more about what she was doing and all of
So
that.
your mom worked for socialserve.com?
Cherie Page?
Yes, I know your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know Van too. Van Gotham?
Yeah.
Yeah. The boss, yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people who worked for, that's a great program. Great company.
Yeah.
We used to be right, they're still on Pecan Street. Pecan Street, yeah. Off of Central Avenue. Yeah, we used to be right across the street from them.
You were on Pecan?
Yeah.
You moved for that short amount of time after you moved off of North Davidson?
No, we were at Pecan before North Davidson. So we were at Pecan when I started, and then we moved to North Davidson, and then we moved to the Plaza, and then here. We're gypsies. We like to.
Yeah, this is your permanent residence.
It is
We're not
our
going to kick you out
No,
anytime
no.
soon.
I don't know. Some days they look at me like, I think we want to kick you.
You got an office at least.
I do have an office. I feel special. Okay, so you want?
I'll start.
You can start
because I'm not going to be doing as much talking as you, which is a good thing because he's much better at talking than me. How did I end up working with this population? It's pretty rare. I don't think that I intentionally ended up working with this group. I think I sort of found my way in. But I worked in sports prior to working at Goodwill, and then I started at Goodwill with youth. And I think you just end up, the group I was specifically working with was youth, but all of the youth we were working with had barriers, and one of the largest ones, especially for youth getting employed, was backgrounds. And sometimes backgrounds when they were 16. It's a totally different topic that I'd love to talk to you about, but which I think we're fixing. But you sort of see that across the different groups that I've worked with while at Goodwill. So I worked with youth, then I ended up working at the South Boulevard Job Link, which is a career center, for a walk-in center for anybody who wants to come in. We worked with a lot of people that had criminal backgrounds and needed some significant help finding employment because of that. Some that weren't going to be able to find employment because of that. And then now I'm working with people with disabilities. So, and we also see the same thing. Sometimes they have a disability because that's tied to their criminal background. It's probably 50-50. Some tied to their criminal background, in that they were shot and now they're in a wheelchair and now they qualify for coaching services, which is what my team provides, or they have a disability and they got a criminal background.
Yeah. You see a lot of mental health and the criminal justice system are married together, unfortunately, which shouldn't be the case.
But yeah, there's a pretty close tie. Or they didn't know better in some cases with people with developmental disabilities, or were hanging out with the wrong group.
Right.
So that's really how I sort of found my way in, and then this was a common theme that we saw throughout like different groups that I was serving. And I felt really close to those groups because it's a one-time thing that happens to you generally, or it can be looked at as something that you've done and then you serve time, and I guess society, when they're thinking about it, says, oh, well, when you get out of prison, your time is up. But but really you're serving forever because you'll forever be tied to that criminal background as long as people are pulling it.
So how did I get started? How old are you?
17.
17. So 2 years older than you when I first got involved in the criminal justice system. Personally, at the age of 19, I was convicted of drug possession and sentenced to 8 years to life in a New York State prison.
8 years to life?
8 years to life. 8 years to life. And that was actually plea bargain because my first offer from the DA was 25 years to life. I got caught with a lot of drugs. And I fell under the Rockefeller laws, which said anything over 8 ounces, you could automatically face life in prison. So at the age of 19, I found myself in prison, and I remember going to a prison. It was Kasaki Correctional Facility. And while there, I was being oriented on the processes of what goes on in the prison. They called it orientation. And I was given this by another inmate. And as he was facilitating this orientation, I kept on asking questions. And the civilian who worked there said, you ask a lot of questions. You talk about it. Would you like a job? I said, doing what? And he said, well, facilitating these kind of things. I said, well, sure, why not? I like talking. So at the age of 19, I started teaching classes about personal dynamics, decision-making, anger management. So for the 6.5 years I was incarcerated, I taught individuals how to prepare themselves for when they got released, how to deal with anger, how to make decisions, how to be a man. So I did that for 6.5 years, and I became a certified counselor, all kinds of trainings, training in aggression replacement training. And when I came home, I couldn't find a job at McDonald's. So I had prepared, I had spent 6.5 years preparing individuals for release and employment. And here I was, somebody with 6 years of experience in interviewing and answering a conviction question. I couldn't find a job. So I ended up volunteering in one location that helped people with criminal records an agency called Exodus Transitional Community. They gave me my first shot. And from there, I found a job.
Exodus is in Charlotte?
Yeah, different, but the name Exodus is very popular in reentry. And then I found a job as a job developer working with women coming out the prison system. And that was a dramatic change for me because I always thought men had it rougher than women in prison. Being a man, it was easy for me to think so. Until I worked with women and realized that the effects of incarceration on women were 10 times harsher than the effects on men. Men were able to emotionally detach. And for women, it was more impactful, that detachment, because first, in New York, not anymore, but back then in New York, after 6 months, a mother lost her parental rights. And that alone, I couldn't imagine somebody telling me I'm no longer permanently. They had to go to court and go try to get the process back. But as a man, I couldn't imagine somebody telling me I'm not the father of my children. But for women, it was automatic. And then you go visit. Like, I had visits every week. Like, not every week, but every month I had somebody come visit me. So you go to a men's prison, and you can see visits all day long. You go to a women's prison, and their visitation, no one sees them. So a woman will stand by her man while he's incarcerated, but a man will not stand by his woman when she's incarcerated. And not everyone, but the majority, percentage-wise. So that was traumatizing as well. So the psychological effect of incarceration is impactful for both genders and all races. But I was able to see the other side, working specifically with women coming out of the prison system. So I was a job developer for a while. Then I developed a program which is commonly known today here as a peer support specialist. Well, back in 2002, 2003, I actually created a program called Peer Navigators that was taking individuals who were incarcerated and wanted, like myself, who wanted to enter the field of human services and giving them a first-hand experience of what it means to be a counselor and work with individuals coming home from jail or prison. So even before Charlotte thought about having peer support specialists, I was actually doing it, training individuals how to do it. Then I came to Charlotte, And before I came to Charlotte, I had actually applied for a job with the agency I'm with now 3 times, and I got turned down. And then I met Myra Clark, the executive director, in a meeting, and now 12 years later, I'm still here.
You've been there 12 years.
12 years.
So I think I mentioned yesterday, but he works for the Center for Community Transitions.
Yeah.
Which is housed here. It's on site here at Goodwill.
Yeah, and that was a great partnership with Goodwill, because Goodwill, we were in the process of moving, and Goodwill realized that they had at least 33% of their population had criminal records, and they wanted to make sure that in a location as big as this, they had wraparound services and brought experts in. They didn't want to, that's one thing I appreciate about Goodwill, was they didn't want to say, well, we could do it all. They said, no, let's bring in the experts on what they do and have them housed in one location. So they brought, they brought Charlotte Metro Bank in, they brought a clinic in, they brought Bistro in, they brought Commonwealth Charlotte, which is financial counseling, and they brought us in to work with people with criminal records. And we were
working on a few other partnerships, but yeah.
Several more. Voc Rehab, crisis assistance, DSS. So, the collaboration that's being done here is fantastic for our clientele.
That's really cool. Sorry, sometimes I forget to talk.
Oh, that's okay. It's just I'll keep on talking. So how did the LifeWorks program come into being? I did not start the LifeWorks program. The LifeWorks program has actually been in Charlotte since 1974. So a little history of CCT, Center for Community Transitions. Our original name in 1974 was the Ex-Cons Organization. Yeah, ECO. And it was actually started by Vista volunteers out of a church. And don't ask me what church, because I don't remember now. I forgot what church it was. So we were housed at a church, and it was started by Vista volunteers, and then we changed the name from Energy Committed to Offenders to, Ex-Cons Organization to Energy Committed to Offenders. But that name also did not really resonate with what we did. And then, so now we changed to the Center for Community Transitions, but that's a mouthful, so CCT for sure. So it's been around since 1974, and it started out as one-on-one counseling for men coming out of the prison system. It expanded from that to employment readiness classes, a one-day employment readiness class. And it expanded into to working with families of those incarcerated. Because what we realized was that when someone goes to prison or jail, the whole family suffers the effect. And so we started a program called Families Doing Time, which focused on working with the children of incarcerated parents and the caregivers of incarcerated parents. Today, the model that we've always used, but today there's a name for it, is we follow a 2-generation approach. We work with the individuals and the caregivers and the children, because we know that the traumatic effect of incarceration is still there, and that doesn't get discussed in any kind of setting because it's taboo to talk about having a parent incarcerated. It wasn't until recently that Sesame Street was brave enough to put a character who has a parent incarcerated. You watch Sesame Street more, no, you don't watch that anymore? No? But they do.
That's right.
It's really cool because there's an awareness now by our society that incarceration affects our community, our families, and the individuals. And then we were able to gain a contract with the Department of Public Safety, which is a correctional systems for North Carolina, and open up a 30-bed residential work release facility for women who are currently incarcerated, but because of good behavior, they're allowed to come back into the community and really, while they're incarcerated, work, pay taxes, and work on that transition back into their families' lives. So so LifeWorks has been around for a long time. Oh, look at that. And specific programs you work in. Yeah, I work in the LifeWorks program. My education is I have a bachelor's degree in human services, but I am also certified trainer in a cognitive-based intervention approach called perceptual control theory that focuses on understanding that all human behavior is intentional, and if we could self-reflect and self-evaluate, we could reduce the harmful behaviors that we perform. It's one of those CBTs.